In a world of mud streets and stone walls, true color was a rare luxury born, not in royal halls but in smoky workshops at the edge of town. The medieval dyer's craft turned roots, leaves, and minerals into vivid blues, deep reds, and golden yellows that marked wealth, rank, and identity. But behind every brilliant hue lay hours of boiling vats, pungent mordants, and secrets guarded for generations. Tonight, step inside the dye house, breathe in the steam, and discover how patience and skill brought color to the gray. Middle Ages if you love uncovering the hidden crafts that shaped history. Hit like, tap subscribe, and let boring history for sleep bring the forgotten past vividly to life, often depicted in shades of brown and gray. The act of making color true, vivid, lasting color was a slow and subtle art from the humblest village to the bustling towns. The process of dyeing cloth was essential yet quietly invisible. Its rituals woven into the everyday life of weavers, tailors, and, above all, the dyers themselves. Imagine you are standing on the edge of a small town, just as dawn breaks. The faint tang of smoke and boiling liquid hangs in the air, emanating from a squat timber building with a battered wooden door. Inside, the dyer's workshop is already coming to life. Bundles of yarn and folded cloth wait their turn, and wooden vats some as large as barrels, others small enough to rest on a fire bubble and steam with strange, shifting colors. The first step in dyeing is always gathering, depending on the region, season, and wealth of the town. The materials for dye might be grown in gardens, gathered in forests, or traded at considerable costs from distant lands. Woad and weld for blue and yellow, madder root for a deep, rusty red, walnut husks, oak galls, or elderberries for browns, grays, and purples. Saffron and indigo are prized but rare, and only the wealthiest can afford the brilliant reds of imported cochineal or the legendary blue of true indigo. The dyer, or sometimes a family of dyers, becomes a quiet expert in the ways of the countryside, knowing where to find the best lichens after rain, the right roots before the first frost, or the insects that hide in bark and crevice. Preparation, which is meticulous. Roots are scrubbed and sliced, berries mashed, leaves soaked and crushed. The dyer's hands are perpetually stained, a mark of the trade. Fires are kindled before sunrise to heat the vats, and water is drawn from wells or nearby streams, sometimes carried a mile or more in buckets. All this must be done before the real work of dyeing can begin. When the dye bath is ready, yarn or cloth, often wool, sometimes linen, rarely silk, must be prepared. This might mean washing it in urine or stale beer to remove grease, or soaking it in a solution of alum copperas or even animal dung. These mordants fix the color, binding the dye to the fiber and making it less likely to fade in the sun or the wash. The process is slow and smelly, requiring patience and an uncomplaining spirit. Cloth is dipped and stirred, again and again, sometimes for hours. The dyer checks the color by pulling a thread from the vat and holding it to the light. A good dye is even, strong, and true. A poor one is patchy, faded, or soon to be lost. Mistakes are common. Water that is too hard or too soft, a fire that burns too hot, a batch of roots that is old or weak. All can spoil a day's labor. The finished cloth is hung on wooden frames or laid out on hedges to dry, its color deepening as the moisture evaporates. Passing villagers remark on the hues: a good blue, a strong red, a gentle yellow. These colors become a point of pride for the town, a marker of identity and trade. The best dyers win contracts with wealthy merchants or the local abbey. The worst may be out of work by season's end. And what of the secrets of the trade? How are recipes preserved, and how does a dyer's family pass their knowledge to the next generation? What do colors mean in a society where bright hues are rare and precious, and how are they used to mark status, allegiance, or celebration? As the morning sun catches the drying cloth, glimmering with the colors of earth and plant, you might wonder, how does this quiet, patient craft ripple out to shape the lives and fortunes of a whole community? In the dim workshop, the dyer's hands move with a practiced calm. Each movement, from stirring the bubbling vat to wringing out a skein of wool, is the product of years of fun, generations of experience. Unlike other crafts, dyeing is bound, not only by technique but also by secrecy and tradition. Recipes are guarded as closely as treasure. In many towns, the secrets of certain colors belong to just a handful of families, passed down from parent to child in whispers or demonstrated in the careful company of kin. By the high Middle Ages, the rise of the guilds brings both protection and constraint to the dyer's life. Dyers form their own fraternities, establishing rules for apprenticeship, quality, and trade. Entry to the craft may require a long apprenticeship, sometimes beginning in childhood. A master dyer is not only a craftsman but also a keeper of the guild's privileges, the right to set prices, inspect the work of others, and, in prosperous towns, restrict competition from outsiders. Colors themselves are never merely aesthetic. In the language of the medieval world, color signals status, allegiance, and sometimes morality. Laws called sumptuary regulations limit who can wear certain shades. Only nobles may wear the deepest purples, or the scarlet that requires imported dye. Blues and greens are for everyday folk, while the poorest often make do with gray or brown of undyed cloth. To appear in bright color is to proclaim wealth, rank, or office. A dull tunic may signal humility, piety, or poverty. The process of dyeing itself is rarely pleasant. Guild rules often require dyers to work outside the town walls or downstream from the main water supply. The vats steam and reek. The runoff muddies rivers and stains stones. Complaints from neighbors are common, and in some places the dyer's district is marked by its pungent air and riot of color cloth hung to dry in every available space. Even across alleys and lanes, family ties run deep. A dyer's son or daughter grows up in a world of stains and scents, learning to tell good weld from bad, or to recognize the faintest trace of contamination in a batch of woad. Some families specialize in a single color, building a reputation that may last centuries. Others experiment, risking batches and fortunes on new recipes, sometimes succeeding, sometimes left with a useless pile of faded wool. Mistakes are costly. A ruined order can mean the loss of a customer, or, for the poorest, a year of hunger. Trade and travel bring new colors and new challenges. Italian merchants import indigo from India, a deep, powerful blue that rivals and eventually replaces local woad. Armenian merchants bring cochineal for rich reds, while other exotic hues filter into Europe. Along trade routes from Africa and the Middle East, the arrival of a new dye might unsettle the local market, spark a dispute in the guild, or lead to a burst of innovation or sabotage. Recipes are stolen, vats contaminated, secrets lost or won by luck or cunning. For all its drudgery, dyeing shapes community identity. Certain towns become famous for a particular hue: a blue from Lincoln, a red from Florence, a yellow from Cologne. Flags, banners, and religious vestments all proclaim their makers in color. Even peasant festivals, with their garlands and ribbons, carry the subtle marks of the dyer's hand. Yet what happens when dyes fail, when a year's harvest of madder is ruined, or a shipment of indigo is delayed? How do dyers respond to scarcity, competition, or the threat of new technology, and what becomes of their ancient secrets as the world begins to change? As centuries slip by, the dyer's world is buffeted by subtle, relentless change. Markets grow and shrink, new colors are coveted and abandoned, but through it all, the craft persists, adaptable, often unheralded, always essential. The Middle Ages give way to the Renaissance, and the dye houses at the edge of towns continue their smoky, fragrant work, binding generations to one another through tradition, hardship, and quiet artistry. The fortunes of the dyer rise and fall with those of the town and its trade. When the harvest of madder fails, red cloth becomes scarce and expensive. A good year for woad means blue tunics on every villager. A bad year brings disputes and desperation. As new trade routes open in the late Middle Ages, exotic dyes arrive, some welcomed, sometimes fiercely resisted by local guilds intent on protecting their secrets and their livelihoods. The introduction of indigo, in particular, transforms markets and sets off controversies that echo in court records and merchant accounts for decades. The science of dyeing evolves slowly. Some dyers experiment with new modern Salem copper tint to fix colors more permanently. Others refine techniques for producing multiple shades from a single dye bath or combine colors to produce deeper, richer hues. Recipes are still closely guarded, sometimes written in cipher or passed down only by word of mouth. Occasional breakthroughs: a new process for fixing purple, a way to mask a weak batch to become the pride of a family or the envy of a rival. Even as color becomes more widespread, it remains precious. For peasants and the urban poor, the luxury of a vividly dyed garment is reserved for festival days or special occasions. A new surcoat in bright blue or a headscarf of clear yellow is the subject of gossip and admiration. Wealthier households commission entire sets of matching cloth banners, tunics, altar cloths, each announcing their status through color as surely as through arms or land. Yet gradually, the world changes. The coming of industrial processes, the mechanization of spinning and weaving, and eventually the invention of chemical dyes in the 19th century render much of the old knowledge obsolete. The dyers' guilds decline, and their secrets become curiosities for antiquarians and historians. A handful of families continue to practice the old ways, either from pride, nostalgia, or in isolated regions where tradition persists longer than in the cities. Still, the quiet influence of the dyer's craft endures. Medieval tapestries hang in galleries, their colors softened but still vibrant after centuries. Illuminated manuscripts, altar hangings, and even fragments of cloth dug from graves reveal the hand of artisans who worked in smoke and steam, trusting in recipes honed by generations past. The language of color, its symbolism, its emotional resonance remains rooted in the painstaking efforts of those who first learned to coax blue from a bitter weed, red from a tangle of roots, yellow from a field of flowers. And so, as you drift into sleep, imagine the dyer at dusk, rinsing the last skein of wool in a cold stream. The colors faint or brilliant, subtle or bold hang in the air, testament to 1,000 small acts of patience, skill, and endurance. The world may change, but the traces of their quiet labor linger in every patch of color, in every banner, in every story woven into the fabric of daily life.